You joined us. All right.
Hey, everybody.
We
It's
missed you on
great
the
to see
past
all
few.
of you.
Any updates from you about TCD or thoughts or anything you want to share before we kind of jumped into today?
I think this is something we've talked about for a long time. I'm impressed with the momentum. I know I was on some local work group meetings and heard about some local work group meetings or LRP meetings last week, and I'm amazed at the partners that are just really interested in this. And this is the way of the future, and really this is how conservation needs to be done. And I'm just really excited about the opportunities to focus on outcomes-based, locally led conservation, because this is really what this is about. So no, just happy to be here, happy to answer. I don't know that I'll be on for the entire time, but I did want to join in, just kind of see who's joining and see what those general questions are. So thanks, Chad.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Travis. Yeah, speaking of which, does anybody have any questions or any hot topics they'd like us to cover for today, or everybody just kind of tuning in?
Chad, one thing that I'd like to mention is that, something that came up last week in one of the local work group meetings was, as you know, the addition of practice scenarios that are going to be specific to their TCPs, excuse me. And, it just made me think perhaps Kauai isn't the only office that's going to be in this predicament, right? And if we do need custom practice scenarios, unfortunately, the deadline for next year is coming up quickly. I think it behooves us to, at least bring some attention to that in case there are some DCs out there that may want to put together some custom TCPs that require a new practice scenario or maybe a revised practice scenario. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. I know, as you have mentioned, that it needs to be significantly different in order for us to justify inclusion of an additional practice scenario. But I also think it's important to recognize that even if the price is the same, that if we're certifying, say, a culvert instead of HDPE pipe, I think that the technical specs would be a lot different, and I'm not sure it would be smart for us to certify something that's significantly different. So it's important to try to get those practice scenarios as close as we can within reason, I guess is my point.
Yeah, the practice scenarios during the recent training, that's a great thought, and certainly we'll get the word out about if anybody anticipates the need for some specialized scenarios, changes to scenarios, or even adoption of a new conservation practice that maybe we don't currently use, but we think would be helpful. And I think that was actually one of the cases in Kauai last year that led us to adopt some of the practices and get them on the cost list for this year. Yeah, it's interesting because we are a bit limited. The payment schedules are basically a typical situation, but not every situation they're meant to cover. So if the cost basis, the units are the same or similar to what you're trying to install, then a lot of times they say just use the existing if it's very close in price. It's when you're changing from like linear foot for a particular practice to cubic yards or something. So your cost basis, there's no way for you to really correlate the two in the units that you certify. That can be another big driver for why we might adopt another scenario. And yeah, we can actually, when we were going through it, and this might be helpful for anybody on the call that's interested on what's available and out there, I could actually do a demo of all the practices, all the different scenarios, and then even break them down by components so people can see like what would go into building out a particular scenario, what's currently available to us to readily adopt. There's a bunch of national scenarios that we can adopt. It takes a little bit of of a process just has to get vetted by Michael, and if it's engineering practice, by Susan. But we can do it.
Chad, hey, too, this is something I was thinking about. Spot on with the response. And James, great. I think you and I talked about this a little bit, and I was thinking about this recently, and this is an iterative process, right? We're recognizing some things that we need to adjust to, and thinking about our timeline of this year doing LRPs right now, and then quickly after TCPs. Well, I think in the future, because we won't always be doing the LRP, or maybe we'll be just doing small updates or something, we can actually shift our TCP deadlines up a little bit so it more coincides with opportunities to adjust those, those payment schedules. So yeah, great catch. We'll do what we can this year, but I do think we will in the future bump up the TCP proposal process so that we have more time to get ready for that next year's implementation.
Yeah, Chad, since it's such an important part of this TCD process, it might be a good topic for the TCD recording that you do every week. I'd be happy to contribute. I don't know if we could potentially get Susan and Michael to talk about practice scenario development as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. We can do it.
Awesome.
Cool. We'll volunteer Michael to take the lead on that since he's not on the call.
Sounds good.
He's one of the regional scenario managers. So the real bonus to the Pacific Islands areas, we're our own region. We get to make all the decisions. Elsewhere across the country, they have to coordinate between a bunch of different states, and then they all have to agree on the scenario that they want to adopt and make compromises. Yeah. We don't need to compromise, which is pretty cool. All right. Let's see. Janet, Laura, Lele, you guys have any questions?
This is Janet. No, I don't. Thanks.
Okay.
Hey, well, maybe they're thinking of questions. I might add, I know we don't have too many people on today, but Jed is a trained facilitator. He's been through the trainings there, and I think we're gonna, talking to Chad a little bit, we're gonna see if he can take a more proactive role in some of the facilitation with some of this stuff too. I need to talk to James, and we need to figure that out. But I totally forgot he was a trained facilitator. So there's another resource for the DCs and some of the partners too that Jed might be able to step in and help out also.
Awesome. Dora, any questions bring into the meeting today?
Well, I just had a little bit of an update. Janet held a really good meeting with the Kona SWCD Permitted Interaction Group last week and got a little more, a better defined in terms of the scope and what they want to do in terms of meetings leading up to the local work group meeting. And just wanted to kind of pass this by you because it looks like they are more comfortable going ahead and kind of narrowing the scope ahead of time as far as what resource concerns and what measures and practices, just because I think the concern is there could be so many other things brought up at the meeting that are just kind of outside of their scope, and including things like wastewater management. And they just don't want to get bogged down in that, and they see kind of the purpose of the local work group meeting is for people to kind of already get on board with what they kind of already have in the chute and really let people kind of roll up their sleeves and put some thought directly into that. So it's a little bit different than taking a step back and saying, okay, we're going to do more data collection of everything, what people think, and put dots on the wall, because they really feel like they're beyond that point. And with lots and lots of years of holding local work group meetings already, they kind of feel like they have the data in hand. And especially with this first one, I think they feel it's important to kind of have something ready to move forward on while they're still collecting data for other possibilities in the future. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there and see if you had any feedback for that.
Yeah, I think that's okay. Obviously, Kona, just like you said, has been doing local work groups for a long time. They've got a pretty good pulse on what the resource issues are in your service area, and that's a huge head start from where a lot of other folks are approaching it from. I think the only thing I would caution you on is to make sure you don't have blinders on to maybe outside issues that could be contributing to some of your goals or problems that you're trying to solve. A lot of times the natural resource issue is not just an agricultural one or a forest land one. It's compounded by impacts from multiple user groups, land uses, other impacts. And so just be mindful that, there might be other impacts there. And even though we couldn't address some of those, maybe it's stormwater runoff, maybe we can't address those directly with our funds, but maybe a partner could address some of that or incorporate that into some other aspect of the planning. So, but I think that's fine. And I would agree that maybe this first time is, your first shot at it. And as we improve the process, we'll become better at working with other partners, incorporating their input, their plans into our own. We're going to redo these long range plans every 3 to 5 years or so time frame. So there will be ample opportunity in the future to broaden the scope later. So I think
This
you're
is
good.
Janet. If I could add just a little bit to what Laura said, we have several different resources. We have the list from the local working group of March 2020. We have a brochure that was put out by the Soil and Water Conservation District, their major concerns, and then our survey that came out. And there was an amazing amount of overlap and all of the concerns that were rated priority. And so probably 80% overlap between all the different sources that we've had. So it really was interesting. So, but we're still open to other things, but still there is a lot of overlap with what we've already found. Thanks.
Yeah, and yes, definitely, Chad, as far as not wanting the blinders, and that actually came up as far as a good use for the local work group meeting is to go ahead and invite the people who have some, are kind of in that realm of working with the resource concern that they choose, but that can bring up other things like, well, have you thought about this? Or, well, my, process is this, and it might conflict or improve, whatever. But yeah, that's kind of what we were thinking.
Great. Run with it. I'm excited to see what you come up with.
I was just thinking too, I remember when I was an AC and we were doing local work group meetings, to be honest, probably the best local work group meetings that I went to and kind of helped the DCs kind of work through were the ones where the DCs would send out the survey information before, and they would come to the meeting and they would already have the survey data summarized and ready for people to make decisions. So I think that's a really good idea. And I echo Chad's concern about, those external factors. But I think just make sure that when you are pitching, hey, these are the things we've already recognized are important issues, just give credibility to how you got there, right? Because people are going to wonder, how did you come up with these? But if you are sharing, hey, we've held several local work group meetings, or this is years of data collected, and we sent out a survey with 100 respondents, this is a summary of it, it really lends credibility to how you came up with what you're presenting for the day. So I love it. It's a really good idea.
Great, thank you.
What's up, Dora? Do you have anything?
Hi. Yeah, thanks for and I want to shout out for Janet and Laura too, because I was able to attend one of those meetings that they had, and it was really good to hear. And I totally echo that. I think people just everybody's so surveyed out with these Zoom calls and everything else, and they're saying the same thing, and we hear the same thing because we've done umpteen number of surveys and still doing the same thing. So I think it was really encouraging to hear that there are these priorities that we can actually are in flight. And we have this project on Molokai too, that it's already in flight, build on that momentum and the successes. We're not discounting anything else, but I think they feel much better engaged and feel that we're actually, the programs are actually responding to them, so that there's some relevance, you know, because right now I think the engagement piece of it is, they feel like they've been doing this for a long time and they've said it and nobody's really listening to it. We keep asking for input, more us too, because we have the same problem. So from an outcome standpoint, I think we're hoping to align more with things that are in flight. So we have some early successes that we can point to and say, these are the outcomes in the direction that we're heading. They may not have achieved the full outcome that we aspire to get, but they're in that direction, and I think that encourages all to keep going. So I think I really appreciate that too, and just I think something I think you said, Travis, too, about, I can't remember who said it, but anyways, someone mentioned that, you know, like we have the plans right now. You're kind of looking at that 3 to 5 year sweet spot where projects can be done in phases to achieve these kinds of goals that take maybe that 3 to 5 years to kind of get to. And so everyone's focused on the immediate, like solve this problem now. And so they're very tunnel vision on solving that. But I think it's really helpful that, you know, we bring some of these 20-year visions, which we have a lot of, into this realm of 3 to 5 years, because it's actionable and we can actually see it in a landscape change that makes a lot more sense, that brings it back to relevance. So I'm kind of following that stream of thought, trying to get everyone to think a little bit beyond just getting over tomorrow. But yes, we have to resolve that. And then we may help them with resolving that, but keeping our kind of planning eyes on the 3 to 5 years, not the 20 years, because the 20 years needs to be there, but I want something actionable. And so that's why we're going to try to focus more to align to these timeframes that you guys have kind of have been mentioning in these calls. So I'm trying to align a little bit more so that we can actually co-create the plans for our lands as well that can fit and meet the needs that you guys are just, you know, that you guys can actually help fund as well. Not necessarily on our lands, but all the properties that are here. Yeah. Hopefully that's consistent. So thank you for spending the time and getting me educated on what it is that you guys are trying to do. So
Dora, that's fantastic.
That's
and really, this model starts to work really well when our partners start bringing projects to the table and saying, hey, this is the vision of long range plan that you have. We're proposing this project. We want to work in this area. We want to accomplish these things. We think it's going to cost this much. We can bring this additional resource to the table. We'd like to propose that you submit it for a target conservation proposal for funding. And I think Oregon has realized some success in that, where the partners have started to align their planning process and how they invest their money. And then they're showing up at the local work group meeting saying, hey, I got a plan. Or work with the DC ahead of the local work group meeting to say, hey, this is a plan that we'd like to propose. Can we bring it up at the local work group meeting and see what everyone thinks? So glad to hear that, Dora. Thank you. Well, talking about TCPs, let's go take a look at one of these, what the template looks like.
Hey, Chad, I'm going to step out. I've got some other things I need to tend to, but hey, Chad, I just want to say thanks, man. You are awesome, taking the vision of where we wanted to go, making this work. Really appreciate you taking this on. And again, everybody within NRCS, Laura, I know as a new DC, you just wanted something new like TCD to add to your list. And I say that chuckling because I know you and I have talked, but I really appreciate the effort moving forward. And Dora, it is partners like you that are going to help make this successful. And this is why we're moving in that direction, because we recognize conservation is best done when there's a team making it happen. So keep up the great work, and thanks for all you do.
Thanks, Travis. Yeah, I really didn't have enough. I needed this whole another layer on top of it.
I know. I know. You got it, though. You're doing awesome. You're doing awesome. All right, guys, take care.
Thanks, Travis. All right, TCPs. Again, TCPs are your chunks of investment that are going to help you achieve the vision of your long-range plan. Long-range plan is longer term, more visionary, bit broader in scope, could be a more complex overall issue. And then these TCPs are the bite-sized chunks that we know we can fund, implement, and make reasonable progress towards in a 3 to 5 year time frame. I think Travis is even amenable to 1 to 2 year projects. If you do have a high impact, smaller project that you just really want to dedicate your time and effort to, but it'll only take 1 to 2 years, I think that's okay too. But probably not much beyond 5 years, if at all. So that's the target. And here it is. I mean, not everyone has to follow this bullet item by bullet item, but I think it's a really, really good start. And basic information, your project title, where it's going to be, start date, end dates. If you've got a lead partner, making sure we identify that up front. Who are we working with? Is it Kamehameha Schools? Is it DOFA? And so here's one of the big questions, right? What's the purpose and need for the TCP? How does it help achieve the vision and the goals? Give us the why. How does this fit? Why does it make sense? Give us your elevator speech, basically, about why this TCP is worth the financial investment, the investment in time and people. Then your problem statement, just kind of giving you some bullet points here. Is there a specific issue or specific resource concern you're trying to address? Tell us why, where, and what about the problem. And of course, the extent. This extent portion is really going to feed back to your timeline. How much do you have to do, and can you get it done in 3 to 5 years? Descriptions of goals and objectives. Again, just making sure that you know why you're doing what you're doing and where you're headed, right? If you don't know where you're headed, you're never going to get there. And so this is really trying to map that out and helping communicate that strategy out, both to NRCS, who's going to be reviewing these and selecting them for funding, but also to the broader partnership, right? So these TCPs can serve more than just proposals for NRCS funding. I mean, they could easily be translated into proposals for other funding, other partner investments, giving pitches to other partners on how they might fit. So, obviously it has to be meet the requirements for NRCS to be able to make decisions, but you can make it more broad than that. One of the big things we really want to know about are, how are you going to measure as you move forward? How are you going to measure the outcomes? How are you going to create those desired future outcomes? What are the expected environmental, economic, and social outcomes? So it doesn't have to be solely an environmental impact. I think a lot of the discussion, at least 2 of the field offices, has been about food security, long-term viability of the agricultural community and farming, the future of farming and agriculture on the island. And, you know, a lot of that can be tied to culture, social issues, financial, socioeconomic issues. Those are all considerations. Here's another one that's kind of neat. You know, will this project help producers meet or avoid natural resource regulatory requirements? So sometimes our investments can help us avoid regulation or help producers stay in compliance. And so if that's one of the goals and objectives, maybe T&E species, sometimes coordination of what we're trying to do with our projects can allow us to move forward more quickly and prevents, you know, maybe consultation or individual consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service over impacts. If we've already mitigated or, you know, worked with U.S. Fish and Wildlife to explain our project, get their buy-in, and be able to move forward more quickly.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
That was also a question on the RCPP proposal, and we thought it was kind of a trick question. So we weren't sure. Will it help producers meet or avoid natural resource regulatory requirements? And we thought avoiding requirements was a bad thing. So we definitely said, oh, it's going to help them meet requirements. And basically by going through the NEPA process, like all of our projects do. So is that kind of how you would see that being answered, or how would you see it avoiding regulatory requirements?
I'll give you an example. One is proposed listing of a wildlife species and impacts it might have on agriculture and restrictions of use. And you could, I'm thinking of an example of the eastern bog turtle back in the East Coast, where, you know, there's a lot of regulation managing, you know, what you can do in those habitats, those wetland habitats that impacts agriculture. So maybe your project proposal is, well, we're going to improve habitat and population security across, you know, the range in our county, and that's going to prevent it from being listed or from additional regulation being put in place in the first place. That would be one. I think compliance with erosion control measures could be another one where you could say it helps them meet those requirements. And I think that's kind of where they're going with it. Trying to think of another good example for you.
AFO-CAFOs.
Yeah.
CNMPs.
Yeah, CNMPs, AFO-CAFOs. You know, if you can show that maybe through your project you can show that you're going to develop enough CNMPs so that you can demonstrate that collectively people or agricultural producers are responsibly managing the resources and preventing erosion and, you know, nutrient loss, pathogen loss to surface water or groundwater, and can avoid additional Department of Health regulation. That might be another good one. I know in Hawaii, I think CNMPs and a lot of agricultures, the permits are all through the Department of Health, which makes it kind of tricky. And most other places, it's Department of Ag.
Can I throw out one as a question? I'm not really sure if this qualifies, but like right now there's a lot of discussions about access deer on some of the islands, on Molokai especially, and maybe even Lanai. And the state, I think, is thinking of getting involved because there's just, I don't know, the recent paper had some, the deer is even starving. So they're putting in, I don't know what measures they're going to be putting in, but I'm not familiar with what they would do. But the risks are that, you know, they'll impose some things where it affects hunters or folks that are on Molokai that do more subsistence style hunting. And the concern is that there's additional state regulatory constraints if folks don't start taking some culling and you know, coordinated action that manages and controls them. Is that something along the lines of this that could be, or is it more federal?
No, it could absolutely be local. Yeah, I'm just trying to think how it would fit in the axis deer context. Just because we don't have much of a say in how the deer are managed, you know, it's not a resource that we really have the authority to manage.
I think it would be more indirect, where it's like, if you do this measure, it'll help manage that population, which then avoids the state's other stuff that might be coming, which is an uncertainty right now. Like if we do this conservation management in this approach by managing our erosion, our habitat, you know, whatever, it manages the population in a way that then, you know, avoids having this as another regulatory thing on top of everything else.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
It's not that we don't want regulation. It's just that we don't want another thing on top of an uncertain situation already, if that's an example.
Yep, I think that's an example. I also thought of another one would be like aquifer drawdown and water supply. You know, if we can show, you know, there's limited fresh water for irrigation, ag use, you know, overuse, drawing down more than we should, and you know, there could be regulation around that to make sure that we're preserving our fresh water supply. But if we can show that, you know, we're reducing agricultural water use by doing, you know, irrigation efficiency projects and can meaningfully reduce the total amount of irrigated water being used, you know, we could possibly reduce regulation on, you know, state mandated control of that water, et cetera. Good session. Good question, Laura. Alternatives, you know, kind of the planning process. You know, is there any other way to cut the cookie? Is this the best way to do business? What is there another approach that we're not thinking of, or maybe there's another approach, but maybe it's too expensive or isn't feasible? Make sure you've put some thought into solving the problem in multiple different ways, and why the chosen alternative is the best. Then just describing, you know, what you're choosing to do, why it's the preferred one, what are the cost benefits of implementing it. You know, a lot of these are just our thought-provoking bullet points to help you scope out, you know, what you're going to say in your in this section. Partner contributions, you know, we really want to know, what are the partners bringing to the table in these TCPs. We realize that NRCS can't really do it all on our own, and the strongest projects are going to be those that we're working with our partners on. So, you know, what role are they going to bring? Are they going to throw some money at this? Are they going to throw people, technical expertise, and just kind of framing that out and documenting that. And so this is a quick example. You know, there's partner name, so it's the Waimea Grazing Lands. Their in-kind contributions can be staff people, and it's 2 full-time equivalents. Their salary is $55,000 a year. This contribution type is technical assistance, so that means they're going to go out there, be working with farmers directly, helping them, you know, scope out their project, implement their management plans, and yeah, short description. Partner technicians via contribution agreement to implement grazing systems. So this is also where you can start to capture, like, if you have an agreement need. So let's say you know that you need 2 full-time equivalent staff people to implement your project, because you just don't have enough people on the ground to give the technical expertise to the farmers that they need in the time that we need to deliver it, right? So this is where you could measure some of that and lay out your proposal. What's your ask? And I'm going to show you the next section. This is your funding request summary. So this is where you're saying, this is what we want. This is the practices and activities, how much we need, where they're needed. Is it time? Is it money? People? How where are projects prioritized and sequenced? Just being really intentional on how you implement your projects so that they're linear and most impactful. So in this case, prescribed grazing activities on 15,000 acres is going to cost $500,000. And another practice is going to be nutrient management on that same 15,000 acres, another $500,000. The total financial assistance you're requesting in your proposal from NRCS is going to be $1 million. And then your technical assistance request. Remember, this is the funding request summary. This is the ask. This is how much money, time, people you want. You're laying out the practices and the extents, what the total cost is going to be. You'd be coming up with this cost using our payment schedules. And then this is the technical assistance. So in this example, they're asking for 2 partner technicians via contribute to implement grazing, which is the same explanation that they had in their match, the partner match contribution. And so they're asking for 2 full-time equivalents of $55,000 a year, each for 3 years, plus and/or 1 biologist in kind for monitoring. So it's a half a full-time equivalent for 3 years. So basically, summarizing all the staff people in an agreement, a potential agreement with NRCS that you would like to propose. I was just thinking, James, that we should maybe put in a section in here. Are there any specific requests for new conservation practices, exemptions, waivers, or unique scenarios?
Yeah, I like that idea. Like, that would be helpful.
Yeah, this is a template. I'm going to put that in here right now so we don't forget. Squeeze that on here. Okay. Not to flesh that one out a little bit more, but put that in there. All right, so that's your ask. How much funding you actually want. So progress evaluation, supporting docs. How are you going to measure your progress towards your goals and objectives? Who's going to report on it? We talk about our partnership. Is the partner going to be responsible for collecting a lot of the data and reporting back on the outcomes? Is this something that NRCS is purely going to track through planning and contracting of practices and acres in the identified watershed? Who's responsible? And how are they going to do it? Are you going to have an on-the-ground portion that's going to be monitored? If we're trying to improve wildlife habitat, is U.S. Fish and Wildlife going to monitor the impact of our practices and our project? Are they going to report back to us, or do we have access to their reporting and monitoring data? Give us a map, where you're going to be working. Doesn't have to be too elaborate, but help us visualize where you're going to work, and any supporting documentation for partner contributions. Contribution letters of support, partnership plans that that document that they're working in the same area we are towards the same goals or common goals, etc. So all of this is to paint a picture of what you're trying to do, what your actionable project looks like, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to last, and how you're going to measure your progress as you go.
Hey, Chad.
Yeah.
Under partner contributions, so what if, just hypothetically, there was a forest restoration project and the partner wanted to contribute plant protection in terms of a fence, but that, just as an example, if that wasn't an NRCS eligible practice, could they still put that, or does it have to be an NRCS program eligible practice?
No, their match doesn't have to be an NRCS program eligible practice. Their match towards the project could be anything that's helping meaningfully, move the needle on the issue you're trying to solve. So, yeah, and this partner contributions doesn't necessarily have to be, match that NRCS is financially going to compensate for, or it's not like it's a grant where there's a required 50% match, right? In this one example, we were trying to build out an example of their match towards a contributions agreement, which is 50-50, right? Partner pays 50%, we pay 50%, and a contribution agreement. So that's what we were trying to map out there. But these partner contributions can be anything that they're meaningfully contributing towards helping reach this specific goal. And basically that's just showing that we're not going at it alone, right? Like, other people have skin in the game, other people are working on a similar project. It's worthy of an investment because we've got these other partnerships that are putting money towards it too. So, if it's critical, the area we're going to do a bunch of tree planting and native restoration work on, critical habitat on, and a piece of that is fencing that we can't pay for, that's great. That's the perfect piece for the partner to contribute.
Okay, so pretty much like anything that's on the table, we could mention.
Yeah.
I mean, going towards the goal. Yeah. Okay.
Going towards the goal. Yep. No, just great point of clarification. Any other questions out there or comments?
I have a quick question regarding timing. I know you guys are getting this prepared now. It's like getting a grant proposal ready. So is that something this is something you all fill out with the help of partners providing project content, right? To then add to this, and that'll become the portfolio that then is this year's or this next 5 years, 3 to 5 years plan. Is that the intent of these templates?
Yep. They are, let me show this. Do you remember the schematic that we had showed? Let's see.
I just want to make sure that we get content together in a way, because we are doing that like in briefs. So I just want to make sure it gets to the right. And it sounds like logistically there's each island. Oh, yes, I remember this from your slides. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So the long range plan, the field office long range, locally led process up here, feeding into our long range plan, which is our more visionary, right? And then these are our bite-sized chunks.
Yeah. So I guess my question is timing. Like, what kind of window of timing? Like, when can you put dates, months, to this? That I just want to make sure we get materials together in a way that aligns with your getting the whole TCPs into the long range plans, into your whole decision process.
Yep. So we have a Gantt chart, and I think I got it here. Let's see. Oh, there it was.
Sorry, this might be taking time from your other things, so I apologize.
So this is the Gantt chart of timing. And ultimately, our goal is to have, TCP proposals by September for consideration for next year's funding. At least one per office. We know that some offices probably aren't going to meet that mark, and that's okay. They'll just have to be considered for next year, or we might have to ask for more funding later to fund their particular projects. But the goal has been to get TCPs written up and submitted for funding by September.
Okay.
And so you can kind of see here, I'm not sure if you can see this, but basically, our long-range planning meetings we thought would go through December timeframe. We start drafting them and finalizing them through the end of February. This is all just kind of an estimate. And then TCP selection is this dark blue, and we thought that would occur, like development of these TCPs, these proposals, prioritizing the different ones, getting the partner buy-in would occur between February and July. Is development of these TCPs. And then submitting those proposals between June and July for the leadership team here at NRCS to kind of review and start making decisions on selections, so that we can make a final funding decision by September. So that has been our timeline that we've been shooting for this year. It's obviously been pushed back a little bit, but you can see we know and realize that a big chunk of the time is going to be trying to put these proposals together and trying to figure out the dollars and cents. And so really, opening that up until July to let field offices work and the partnership work on that.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, that definitely helps.
All right. Any other questions? Man, the whole Kona crew is on the call today. I can see who's committed.
We're very intimidated. Yeah, we're just keeping up to speed here.
Yeah, no, you're doing great. It's the more you hear it, the more we ask questions, just kind of keeping an ear to the ground of what's going on. It's going to be immensely helpful for you, Laura and team, for sure.
Yep, appreciate it.
All right. And Dora, I do have someone I want to get you in contact with on Molokai. They're basically doing a really cool experiment with double rows of fencing as a really cheap alternative for access to your control. And apparently they've had some really good success with it.
Yeah, we saw some federal award that went to County of Maui, like $1.8 million to put like high gauge tension wires, fences up. And I was wondering how that was going, because we know everything corrodes and rusts in that tropical environment. So
Yeah.
they got, $1.8 million is great. I just wonder how long those fences will last. And, we want to team up with folks that are thinking about those kinds of actions for conservation, but at the same time, it's like, are there ways to do it without breaking the bank on fencing as well? So kind of do two things like we were talking about with one solution,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That wasn't our NRCS funds local PIA funds. Susan, do you know what that was by any chance? I'm not sure if Susan's. You're muted.
Sorry, I have to unmute. No, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, this was a pretty cool way to do it. They just had the regular fence, and then they had another fence that was just T-posts and electrified horse tape. So, the large white, woven, white strip, I guess it's 1 inch or 2 inches. So it's a bit better visual barrier. And it's 5 to 6 feet away from the fence. And the deer, even the pigs, they don't want to get into that confined space between the two. And so really easy to set up. He said it was really cheap to protect like 30 something acres. Cost them about $2,000 maybe in total material, which is pretty cheap comparatively, and it was really quick. So at least for 2 weeks, he's had no deer incursions, where he would have hundreds of deer per night, typically.
Yeah,
So.
we found that in Pennsylvania too, that the deer won't jump if they see the other fence. They won't.
A second barrier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So no, definitely I'm open to, talking with them. And there was I actually have another quick question. This is maybe more kind of organizational, but I did touch base with Kavika over the Plant Materials Center, and he mentioned that his resources, his time is tied to certain programs. So it's not like we could just talk to them about certain things. He actually has like marching orders from the program. So I'm like, what does that mean? Does that mean that these TCPs are gonna? So, I was just trying to make the connection there because I was like, wow, it sounds like there's great resources, but how do we activate that with, with headquarters or with whatever? I mean, where does he get his marching orders to do something?
Yeah, so Plant Materials Center, that'd actually be a great question for Michael, because I guess I don't really have the perfect understanding of how the Plant Materials organizes all their projects. I know they do get proposals. They actually even get paid to do some research or provide plant materials for some entities, public agencies. So I would absolutely think that if we had a TCP that said we needed some, plant materials research or some feedback from the Plant Materials Center to help make it successful, we could push that through, or at least make the ask. That's a good question. I can follow up with Michael and ask him what the process is for getting projects approved for Plant Materials Center work. James, Susan, you have any insight to that?
I don't want to speak for Michael, but yeah, I did supervise the Idaho Plant Materials Center, or the Aberdeen, and they have a variety of different programs they work on, as you can imagine. They have things like their foundation seed program, which is kind of their bread and butter, where they produce seeds for conservation purposes, but they also have a variety of different conservation trials that they do, usually in combination with universities and or other private companies that are particularly interested in a certain type of conservation technology. I do think that there would be some opportunity there to do some specific work. Ko'olave comes to mind when we talk about specific work that the PMC has been engaged with. They have more flexibility in their programs. And so I do think that they could potentially get involved with TCD in a way that's maybe non-traditional for NRCS field office folks. So I don't want to speak for Michael. The Ho'olehua PMC is unique, and I'm sure they manage their programs differently than most. because of the uniqueness of it. But it would be worth talking to Michael about how we could bring them into TCD development.
Yeah, because we want to build off. Oh, sorry. I was going to say we'd like to build off of some of the content that Susan had shared with me, and information. It sounds like there's a good match with some of the things that we're looking to do and what you guys have already done, and so aligning those might be a really great opportunity. So David was the other person that I think you all had wanted me to check in with, so I still need to connect.
Good. Yeah, did she talk to you about Vedivir?
Yes.
The grass that can save it all. Love that stuff.
Well, we're very interested in seeing how it will do with the erosion control areas, but it also gives us a variety of grass type of techniques that can be co-cropped with some of the other cover crops that we're looking at, which has viability for farmer, kind of economies, right? Like that they can actually make some money off of, and then at the same time conserve with erosion control, but also trying to restore kind of a fallow area where it's just been, the runoff and everything else has just taken its toll. But also the axis deer now love some of the crops. So how do we protect? How do we use? And it's like that substitution planting, right? Like plant some things, and this double fence thing came up in discussion that we were using the double fence as a way to kind of contain kind of food resources that the animals will want, but keep them in a certain area, and then let other areas be kind of managed so that they grow. Where, yeah, if the axis deer wants to eat it, they're not going to eat through the whole 7 feet of this dense crop. So go ahead, and that's fine. And it's been planted for them. So these are ideas that I think we see feasibility in doing. And I know wind fences have always been something that we've used in other areas to manage erosion and soil and movement of things that we don't want moving around. So it's just putting that plan together, and I think we're close to something that I want to make sure we leverage the resources that are on island that have the eyes and the ears, to the ground, and I want to make sure we vet it out with them.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that'll be a do. Maybe Michael to kind of give us a breakdown of the Plant Materials Center and how it might be able to serve a role in TCD.
Chad, this is James. I did want to mention that one of the big projects for PMCs in the States is reimbursable agreements. For example, in Aberdeen PMC, they did a lot of agreements with the National Park Service to produce specific types of plants that were very hard to propagate. I know Yellowstone, Grand Teton National Park, and Yosemite all went to the Aberdeen PMC for unique wetland plants that required certain types of propagation that couldn't be done without that specialized experience. So it's a potential, I guess, to work through reimbursable agreements to make that happen. And Susan might be able to, shed some light on how reimbursables work and how they might play into TCD.
Yeah, I'll definitely hit them up. I think it's a great discussion. All right. Well, it's 12:01. Unless anybody else has any other quick questions, we'll wrap it up. All right.
Thank you,
Hearing none,
Chad.
thanks everybody.
Great session.
Always appreciate you guys all tuning in. Take care and have a great week.
Did Janet have a question?
No, I just said thank you. It was a really good session. So
Okay.
thank you. Have a great
Hey,
weekend.
take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.